As we continue to track the conflict in the Middle East, let's recap how we got here. Israel first launched a massive round of strikes on Friday. They were targeting Iran's nuclear and military sites and key personnel, including the country's top nuclear scientists. These strikes came as Iran and the U.S. were in negotiations to limit Iran's nuclear capabilities. That 60-day deadline that President Trump had set to make a deal had just passed. So the Israeli operation took out 4 top military leaders, including the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and its Air Force. Iran responding, predictably launching ballistic missiles into civilian areas, we're told. The barrage at times overwhelming the Iron Dome and leaving behind extensive damage. Now, despite the Trump administration urging Iran not to retaliate, Iranian officials have indicated that U.S. bases and interests in the region, well, they still may be targeted. With the growing instability in the Middle East, the U.S. had pre-positioned assets capable of defending against ballistic missiles in the region and has now ordered more of that into the eastern Mediterranean Sea. I sat down Friday with Senate Majority Leader John Thune in his office on Capitol Hill to discuss all of this escalation in the Middle East and the state of the budget battle. Let's start domestically. You've got the big, beautiful bill now simmering here in the Senate with a lot of different kinds of objections. CBO, its latest projection it puts out is that the lowest income households will lose $1,600 a year in federal resources, and the highest earners will gain $12,000 in federal resources. Democrats are calling a shameful transfer of wealth from working families to the ultra-rich. How do you respond?
Yeah, I don't know how you can come to that conclusion. We're increasing the child tax credit, and if the Democrats had their way at the end of the year, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act would expire, and you would have the child tax credit cut in half for working families. So we're not only going to keep it from getting cut in half, we're going to increase it. You know, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime.
Does that survive?
Lower the tax on Social Security recipients. Yes, it will. Those are all things that were the president's priorities, and the House included them in their version of the bill, and now we will also have them incorporated into ours. So I don't know how they come to that conclusion. This is going to be very much about middle-income taxpayers. And as I said before, if we don't act at the end of the year, there will be a $2.6 trillion tax increase on families making less than $400,000 a year and a $600 billion tax increase on small businesses. So this is really about preserving and protecting families and ensuring that they've got more dollars in their own pocket and they're sending less to Washington.
But there are even those within your party who say they worry about the long-term impact, that it's not going to be good for families, for their kids and for their grandkids, because they don't see adequate offsets there and just more contributions to the deficit, which continues to grow. So what do you say to those folks who are within your own party and may not be a yes vote for you yet?
Well, I would say, and I'm a pro-growth conservative, so what you want to get on one hand, Shannon, are pro-growth policies, and that's tax policy, it's regulatory policy, it's energy policy that creates greater growth in the economy. When the economy is growing and expanding, people are making money, taking realizations and paying taxes, and government revenue goes up. And then on the other hand, you've got to start bending the cost curve down. And what we've been seeing is the costs going like this, the federal government, and this does bend it down, literally for the first time in decades. This will be the largest spending reduction in history. You're talking over $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion, up to $2 trillion. We'll see where we finally end up in the Senate. But it'll be a major reduction in spending, coupled with reforms to programs to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and then also have on the other side pro-growth policies. You get greater growth in the economy, more revenue here, spend less here, and pretty soon you can start seeing things balance out. But you have to start somewhere, and that's what this bill does. And it is a big, big change from the way that things have been done in Washington for the last several decades. And again, I would argue it's the biggest spending reduction in American history.
So let's talk about some of the specific objections. You've got members with Republicans on your side who need to work through. So we've got SALT, which is this exemption for people who are in high tax states for their state and local taxes. It's been raised to $40,000 on the House side. When I asked Senator Rick Scott about it last week, he said absolutely not. It's not going to survive.
We should not be subsidizing blue state governors' wasteful spending.
So there's a question about how much of it does survive, but you've got House members who say they tweak that and I'm now a no vote.
Right. Well, and again, when people ask me how much of this can you get in there, how much of that can you get in there, it does come down, it's a function of math. And at the end of the day, you've got to get 51 senators and 218 House members to get a bill on the president's desk. So obviously we're very cognizant of the political dynamics that the Speaker is dealing with in the House. That said, in the Senate at least, there isn't a high level of interest in doing anything on SALT. We believe as a matter of policy, you don't want to have low tax states subsidizing high tax states. So I think at the end of the day, we'll find a landing spot, hopefully that will get the votes that we need in the House, a compromise position on the SALT issue, if you will, that will enable us to get the requisite number in both the House and the Senate to get a bill on the president's desk.
So as you try to work all this out, Senator Cruz is among those out there publicly saying, I'm not sure this gets done by July 4th. How does it get done? Will you keep senators here through weekends and holidays?
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll get done. We need to get it done. And I think it is a huge priority, obviously, for the president. He campaigned on it. This is an agenda that we are all committed to, and we will roll into the 4th of July recess if necessary in order to get this on the president's desk.
Okay, let's talk foreign policy, because as you and I are talking, Israel has unleashed a number of strikes. On Iran, there have been return strikes aimed primarily at its nuclear program, nuclear scientists, military leaders, air defenses, all kinds of things. Senator Chris Murphy is pointing the finger at Israel. He says, they're essentially blowing up the talks that the U.S. has been having with Iran, that President Trump has been cautioning, let us try to get this deal done. But he then ultimately points to President Trump, because he says if we hadn't left the Iran nuke deal, they wouldn't have advanced to the point that they are, that Israel feels like they have to act.
Well, first off, I think President Trump is all about trying to keep America out of wars and to try and find paths toward peaceful outcomes and peaceful solutions. I think he's tried to do that with Iran. Iran has grown, I think, increasingly defiant of late in these talks and these discussions. But what this comes down to is action taken by Israel to defend themselves and their people. They view Iran's nuclear capability, as do we, as a non-starter. That is a destabilizing force not only in the region but in the entire world. And what you heard Prime Minister Netanyahu say when he spoke to Congress last year is that the only thing standing between Iran and the United States is Israel. And that's absolutely true. I mean, they're the little Satan, we're the big Satan. And they want to wipe Israel off the map. And that just isn't something that the Israelis can accept. And so this is their decision to defend themselves and their people. What I would suggest to Iran is that they not target Americans in any of this, because if they do, they better be prepared, because we will respond.
What does that mean? Because, what the president campaigned on is getting us out of foreign conflicts and not getting involved in any new ones. But certainly Israel is an ally we have pledged that we will stand with without equivocation. But if Iran does go after U.S. bases, is it more than a defensive response for us in that case?
Well, I think Iran should be prepared for all of America's might to descend upon them if they go after and target Americans or American bases or installations in the Middle East. Clearly this is the Israelis taking action, trying to take out Iran's nuclear capability, and they view that as an existential threat to their existence. And frankly, they're right about that. But what the U.S.'s response will be triggered by is how Iran responds. And if they do, as they have been for a long time, start targeting Americans, and their proxies in Yemen and in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon have now for decades been creating disruption and chaos and death and destruction in that region of the world, and we have a presence there. And if they attack that presence, they should be prepared for us to respond.
So you were at the White House this week. What would you say is your relationship with the president? He had a lot of praise for you this week. He called you out by name and thinks you're doing a great job. Is the job what you thought it was? How much of is he a partner in you trying to get things done here? Well,
I mean, to get things done around here, he's the closer. He has to help when we're trying to pass major legislation. Ultimately, has tremendous influence in talking not only to senators but to House members and ensuring that we're all operating as a team.
Well, we'll watch as you tick towards that July 4th deadline with a very full agenda. In the meantime,
so will we.
Happy Father's Day in the meantime. Thanks for making time. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.